Brian Billick, NFL on Fox, joining us. Hi, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing great. I like where I'm at, and I like what I'm doing.
But when you were with the Ravens, did you ever look at another job while you were with the Ravens or think about that?
Well, no. When you're a head coach in the National Football League, there's no other place to go in that regard unless you're, and that's old school in terms of the guy that thinks, you know what, I want to go someplace where I'm the head coach, general manager / VP of. We got a lot of slashes in this league, but we're even past that day anymore. You know, the college coach is a little bit different. You know, my personal perspective, you know, you got to give them the latitude to advance themselves, but I think it was simply a matter of leveraging their position where they were. I think Chip Kelly stayed in Oregon for a lot of the right reasons, because I think the college game is perfect for Chip Kelly, and I think it gave him continued leverage. I think Brian Kelly wanted to be asked, and ultimately will stay at Notre Dame.
I agree with you with Brian Kelly that he wanted to be considered, just to say, look at where I've been, look at where I was at Cincinnati, I was in, Division II, I was lower football, and now I'm at Notre Dame. It's nice to have somebody flirt with you, at least talk to you. Chip Kelly did make the right decision, but I think he made that decision because he looked at the quarterbacking situations, and I think that's why you're seeing no marquee coaches, guys, big names are taking these jobs because they're looking at the quarterbacking situations, Brian.
Yeah, but that's fluid. I mean, when you look at jobs in the National Football League, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is to say this is a good or bad job because their personnel is X at the time, because it's so fluid and changes. But you're absolutely right. Certainly when you look at, say, San Diego and Chicago, if you believe Jay Cutler and Phillip Rivers are quality quarterbacks, that makes them more attractive now because it's less of an unknown. In particular, when you look at the quarterbacking options, both in free agency and the draft coming up, last year it was a slam dunk. There were some attractive options, not the least of which right up at the front with Andrew Luck and RG3, and as it filtered down. They're in, at least so far, and I've got to qualify it because I have not immersed myself in the draft as of yet, but I don't believe, in talking to a number of personnel people, that the quarterbacking class of the Geno Smiths and the Matt Barkley represent that attractive an option that we had last year. So as someone looks at these jobs and the quarterbacking situation, you may not quite have as many options as it appeared to be last year.
He's Brian Billick. He'll call the first playoff game, Seahawks-Falcons, coming up on Sunday on Fox. Speaking of Seattle, I mentioned the biggest gamble this year was it Jim Harbaugh, Colin Kaepernick, Pete Carroll with Russell Wilson, or the Broncos going all in for Peyton Manning?
Wow. Well, I would go with Colin Kaepernick from the standpoint that it happened in season. Anytime you make a dramatic move like that in season, the risk-benefit ratio is very, very high. At least the Peyton Manning, it was calculated. You could look at it. You saw that the entire league wanted to jump in, so you had a little bit of a comfort zone that, okay, how much of a risk is this really? And with Russell Wilson, you take a third-round draft choice. You already spent $10 million on the guy you thought you were going to have a quarterback in Matt Flynn. So you had a comfort zone, and you take a guy in the third round, and he ends up superseding him. I don't know if that's as big a risk as much as it is as, oh, wow, look what we found. You know, there's just manna from heaven from the football gods that said, oh, God, we thought we could go this way, but look how this guy's picked. So from a pure risk standpoint, from a coach taking that kind of calculated risk, I'd say Kaepernick falls into that category.
If you're looking at these games, we had Warren Sapp on yesterday, and I said Ravens' chances in Denver, and he said the Ravens better pray. Let's start there. Ravens' chances against Denver in Denver with Peyton.
I go back to the last game, not because of Peyton Manning, not because now that Ray Lewis is back. Denver ran for better than 186 yards on the day against that Raven defense in Baltimore. Now, I know Ray Lewis is back, but I had Ray Lewis in his last game before he got hurt against the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys literally ran up and down the field. If Denver can duplicate that running game at home against a very emotional Raven team that's coming off that emotional high on a short week, notwithstanding the game that Peyton Manning may have, I think it might be a tall order for Baltimore in Denver.
The Texans, and we keep talking about their team that has to be ahead. They're not a very good come-from-behind team. You're going to New England. You got to establish the run. Schaub can't win it on his own if it comes down to that. Chances of the Texans in New England.
Wow, you talk about prayer. It depends. You know, you may have to make that Faustian deal with the devil to get that one done. You're right. If unless somehow New England comes out rusty, which, again, with Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, they've been through this. I just don't know that. I think they're going to come out healthy and fresh as opposed to rusty. If they set that pace early, I think Houston kind of collapses and goes, oh, boy, we've been here before.
You got Seattle, and I look at teams, and we've seen this the last couple of years, Brian, that they get hot at the right time, whether it's the Giants or the Packers previous year, and then they take that momentum in. Is Seattle that team this year?
Very well could be. When you look at the wins they had an overtime win on the road against Chicago. Just winning by itself is important, but that it was on the road, it was overtime. 50-plus blowouts, one of them on the road against Buffalo, all but a Buffalo team. And then what they were able to do to Washington. My biggest concern for Seattle, because they are that hot team. They all have that balance. Their physical style of play is portable, as we say. But I do worry about when I did the West Coast, East Coast, back and forth, my concern wasn't necessarily that game. It was what kind of shape am I the next week? For Seattle to have to do that West Coast, East Coast with a very emotional game in Washington, to now have to do it again on a let's see. I think Atlanta, I have nothing to base this on. I'm about to go out to practice today, so I have nothing to base this on other than just general observation. If I'm Atlanta, I'm going to come out and maybe crank that no huddle up early. I'm going to try to wear out Seattle a little bit emotionally based on what they've had to play to get here. But that matchup, that physicality of Seattle, it is portable. I think they're going to make it a tough run for Atlanta on Sunday.
Let me go back to Seattle's game against the Redskins and with RG3. The coach's responsibility when you have a player who is going into a game banged up, wearing a bulky knee brace, and has had a damaged knee prior to in his college career. At what point do you say, I have to protect him from himself because every player wants to go back in? So what would your role be with RG3?
Yeah, it's tougher in game than it is during the week. But, Dan, we've talked about this before. It's a three-tiered process. First, does the player think he can go? And typically you're right. They'll regard us, yeah, I can go. I mean, the limb is just hanging there. No, I'm okay, coach. Then the doctors have to tell you. And there's not a coach in this league that has, those initials in front of his name that says, Dr. Shanahan, Dr. Billick, Dr. Ryan, whomever. So the doctors have got to tell you, look, is he further at risk? Can he hold up? If they tell you yes, that in their professional opinion he can hold up, then it does take the eyeball test. Now, I will say this. I had Washington at Philadelphia a couple weeks before that, and RG3 was coming off the injury. And they crafted a game plan that was very much in the pocket. And, yeah, you could tell he was favoring the leg, but he could orchestrate that game plan and played very well. So I thought, okay, because he can beat you from the pocket. That's a special quality about RG3 compared to those guys that run around. I was surprised at the way they tried to get to the edges against Seattle, because that clearly, you could see not only was he not going to be effective at it, but it kind of wore that leg out. So I don't question them keeping in the game because they went through the protocol. RG3 said he wanted to go. The doctor said he was okay and no further at risk. But you could see I would have kept him more in the pocket, and like I had seen the previous games to finish the season, to try to get him through that game, because you could clearly see with the outside plays, it not only wasn't effective, but it kind of wore him out.
And then you got San Francisco and Green Bay getting reunited here. Kaepernick, big stage. Aaron Rodgers playing probably better than anybody at that position right now, in my opinion. What do you think happens?
Well, I think you have to go back, and I just got done looking at that game earlier in the week, and you have to go to the end of that game that San Francisco won. San Francisco was all over it early, but they didn't do much in the second half, and if it weren't for an Aaron Rodgers, rare turnover in that fourth quarter, deep in their own territory, and then Frank Gore goes off on a 20-yard run and they score, and that was the separating part of the game. San Francisco was not able to move effectively enough in that second half. I'm a little worried about the Green Bay defense and the way Minnesota ran on them, because certainly that's the way that San Francisco is going to challenge them. And getting Justin Smith back is going to be huge. Does that offensive line hold up for Aaron Rodgers? Because those receivers and how they match up, they're just incredible. Aaron Rodgers at the top of his game. This is going to be an interesting one. San Francisco's got to be the complete San Francisco team we've seen. Justin Smith, Aldon Smith on the outside, multiple looks, very physical, Green Bay can't run. It's all on Aaron Rodgers, which isn't bad, by the way, and mainly turnovers. If San Francisco does not generate turnovers against Aaron Rodgers, I think Green Bay wins.
Great stuff. Thank you, Brian. Have fun this weekend.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Brian Billick, NFL on Fox in Atlanta. He'll have Seahawks against the Falcons Sunday at 1 Eastern.